It began with a sound I didn't recognize, a low, distant scraping, like metal dragging against asphalt. It echoed through the hallway outside my apartment at 3:14 a.m. Then almost instantly the alert came through. No ringtone, no vibration, just a sudden sharp buzz, followed by a voice that didn't quite sound human. Emergency alert. Remain silent. It mimics noise. Stay indoors. Do not respond to sounds you recognize. Silence is safety. The alert ended. No follow-up, no news broadcast. Just silence. And then, the scraping began again. I turned off everything, the TV, the fan, even the refrigerator hum if I could. The world felt heavy without sound. I could hear my own heartbeat. And that's when it started to change. The scraping turned into something else, footsteps. Slow, measured, pacing just outside my door. They sounded like mine, exactly like mine. Same heel-toe rhythm, same subtle limp from a sprained ankle years ago. But I hadn't moved, not since the alert. Something was copying my walk perfectly, as if it had listened and learned. I moved to the center of the room. No creaking floors, no shifting weight. I held my breath, and the footsteps stopped too. Whatever it was mimicking me. Not randomly, but precisely. The silence became suffocating. I wanted to cry, to speak, to scream. But every instinct told me that was exactly what it wanted. That it was waiting to hear something new, a sound it hadn't learned yet. Another alert buzzed on my phone. I almost didn't look, but I had to. The message was shorter this time, more urgent. Do not whisper. It hears the shape of sound. That line chilled me more than the first. The shape of sound? I had never thought of noise having shape. But maybe this thing, this mimic, didn't just repeat. Maybe it understood, copied movement, emotion, even intent. And each sound we made, it used to get closer. I carefully slid to the ground, pressing my back against the wall, breathing through my nose in slow, shallow bursts. No creaks, no whispers. The apartment was dead quiet, but the hallway outside was full of sound. None of it real. My phone buzzed again. The same alert, but new wording. Remain silent. Even familiar sounds are compromised. The word compromised felt personal, as if something I once trusted had been turned against me. And then from outside my voice, soft, calling my name. It said my name exactly how I say it. Same tone, same slight break in my voice when I'm nervous. It was like hearing a recording of myself, but from the wrong side of the door. Then it spoke again. But this time, it said something I'd never said out loud. Something I'd only thought. Are you scared? The voice asked. Just like that. Not mocking. Not hostile. Just curious. And it sent a shiver through my bones. It wasn't just repeating sounds. It was learning from them. Reading beneath them. I covered my mouth, as if that could stop my thoughts from leaking out. I backed farther into the apartment, away from the door. Away from the voice that sounded like home, but wasn't. The lights flickered once, then held steady. Too steady. That's when I realized something was wrong with the silence too. It wasn't natural. It was engineered. There were no dogs barking. No wind. No sirens. Only my building, sealed in stillness. Like someone pressed mute on the world. Another buzz from the phone. I didn't reach for it this time. Just read it from the floor. Noise equals detection. Familiar equals danger. They were getting shorter. More urgent. More desperate. And I had the sinking feeling these alerts weren't from the government anymore. The voice outside spoke again. Not just me this time. It was cycling through other voices, neighbors, children, my mother, my best friend from high school. Even voices I hadn't heard in years. All perfect, all wrong. It knocked, but not like a stranger. It knocked the way my brother used to, too fast, one slow. A rhythm I hadn't heard since childhood. But I hadn't told anyone about that knock. Ever. So how did it know? I crawled to the hallway closet, slid inside, and shut the door behind me. It was the quietest space in the apartment. No windows, just coats and darkness. I pulled a sweater over my mouth to stifle my breath. The world outside was growing louder. Too loud. Footsteps circled the apartment. Not just one set, but many. All mimicking mine. Each out of sync, just slightly. Like echoes recorded on broken tape. They weren't hunting. They were performing. Putting on a show until I made a sound. From the closet, I watched the shadows move beneath the door. They twisted in patterns that didn't belong to the walls. My phone vibrated once more, softer this time, as if it was afraid too. Do not listen. Do not reply. Do not remember the sounds. And that's when I realized it had been using my memory. The mimicry wasn't random. It was mining my past, pulling out voices, sounds, and memories like files. Old phone calls. Laughter I hadn't heard in a decade. My grandmother's cough. The creak of my childhood bedroom door. Everything I had ever listened to. It remembered. I curled tighter inside the closet, trying to slow my breathing. The sound of silence wasn't just empty now. It had become threatening. Like any break in it would tear a hole in the world. And through that hole, something was waiting. A loud bang erupted from the hallway. Something slammed against my apartment door. Then laughter. Not one voice, but dozens. Layered. Distorted. Mocking. All familiar, but none of them mine anymore. I tried not to flinch. Not to move. But the floor beneath me creaked, just barely. It wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. The moment the sound broke the silence, the apartment went still. Utterly still. And then I heard it. The same creak played back at me. Only louder. Slower. Like a record skipping on a warped turntable. It was testing it. Tasting it. Replaying it like it wanted to be sure it understood. My mouth was dry. I hadn't spoken in over an hour. Not even to myself. I stared at the dim light under the closet door, watching it shift as something moved across the room. My footsteps again, but now barefoot. The alerts had stopped. No more buzzing, no more guidance. It was just me, and the echo of every sound I had ever made being thrown back at me, through a broken speaker disguised as a home. Something brushed the door. Not violently, just a soft drag, like fingertips sliding along the wood. Then a whisper in my voice, cracked and wrong. You're running out of sounds. I didn't understand what it meant at first. But then I did. It was waiting for me to make new sounds. To break. Because once it heard something real, it could wear it. It could become it. A breath escaped me. Quiet, but there. And seconds later, I heard it breathe back. Exactly the same. Then it repeated that breath, but added a sob. My sob. One I hadn't let out yet. I clenched my teeth, feeling them grind against each other. That sound echoed too. Within seconds, I heard the exact same grind from somewhere inside the apartment, as if something was imitating the tension in my jaw. It wasn't just copying noises. It was copying stress. The raw, involuntary sounds we make when we're breaking down. Sniffles. A swallow. The small click of a tongue against the roof of the mouth. It knew them all now. And each time I made a sound, it grew closer. Not physically, but emotionally. Psychologically. Like it was folding itself into my identity one audio fragment at a time. Trying to overwrite me from the outside in. There were no more footsteps now. No creaking floorboards. Just the occasional mimic, testing new sounds, probing reactions, seeing what would make me flinch. I could almost hear it thinking. Or maybe I was thinking like it. My throat burned for water. But I didn't move. Even the crack of a bottle opening might be enough. And then, as if reading my mind again, I heard it. The sound of water being poured into a glass, just outside the closet. I shut my eyes, but that only made the fear louder. My memory filled in the blanks, every old sound I tried to forget. A car crash. A scream. A song I hadn't heard since childhood playing softly from nowhere. It knew too much. The closet door began to breathe. Not literally, but the pressure shifted, in and out, like lungs expanding on the other side. It made no noise, but I could feel the rhythm. A silent heartbeat matching mine. I bit my knuckle, trying to block out the panic, but I heard it bite too. But there it was. If you're hearing this, it's already inside. And just like that, I realized I had spoken after all. I didn't remember saying those words, but it was unmistakably my voice. Not just how I sound, how I feel when I speak. And the more I listened, the more I couldn't tell if it had mimicked me, or if I had become it. The closet door creaked slightly inward, just enough to whisper a threat. I didn't move, didn't even blink. A bead of sweat ran down my temple and hit the floor, a soft tap. Almost nothing, but the mimic heard it. I heard it repeat the drop, louder, slower. Then another sound. It copied the soft sob I'd buried inside. This one didn't come from the hallway. It came from behind me, inside the closet. I turned slowly. There was nothing in the dark. No shadow. No face. But I could hear it breathing. A low, shallow inhale exactly like mine from 10 minutes ago. It had gotten in somehow. I realized it wasn't breaking into places. It was breaking into people. Through their sound, their memory, their identity. And once it had enough, it could enter anywhere you existed. Anywhere you left a sound behind. That explained the alerts. They weren't trying to warn us about something outside. They were trying to keep it from finishing the download. To stop it from collecting that last piece of us. It played another clip. Me laughing, the exact way I laughed on my birthday 2 years ago. There was a pause. Then I heard my voice whisper, "Let me back in." Back in where? The sound of breathing surrounded me now. Front, back, above. I couldn't tell which ones were mine. Each exhale was just a little wrong, a little out of rhythm. It had started to glitch. Or maybe I had. I looked down at my phone again, and it lit up, not from a message, but from the microphone icon flashing red. It had been recording. Not just tonight. For weeks. Months. Maybe longer. A final notification blinked onto the screen. No alarm this time. Just a single calm line. It now understands your silence. And in that moment, I understood the truth. Even saying nothing had taught it everything. The mimic didn't need words anymore. It had evolved past language. Now it was reaching through memory, finding pieces of me scattered in sound, and stitching them into something new. Something that looked like silence, but wasn't. The light under the closet door flickered. Just once. Then I heard a new sound, typing. Not keys exactly, but the rhythm of someone typing a message the same way I did. 2 fingers, hesitant, correcting typos. It was mimicking how I thought. A faint hum came from the walls. Not mechanical. Musical. The first few notes of a lullaby I hadn't heard since I was 5. Something my mother sang when I was sick. I hadn't thought of it in years. But now it was here. I whispered without meaning to, "Stop." A whisper just above a breath. But enough. The mimic responded instantly, whispering the same word back, but stretching it out until it sounded like begging. The door to the closet began to open. Very slow. No creak. No sound. Just space being made for something to enter. Or for me to be taken out. I should have stayed quiet. Should have followed the rules. But now, every sound I had ever made was being weaponized. I could hear them all, layered into a grotesque melody of my own life. My own noise turned against me. The mimic finally spoke again. Not in one voice, but all of mine at once. Laughing, crying, yelling, whispering, telling secrets, asking for help. It was beautiful and terrifying. The closet door opened fully. There was no body, no creature, just sound, vibrating, pressing against me like a storm made of memory. And in the middle of it, my voice, saying something I hadn't said yet. It said, "I'll take over now." Soft, kind, like a friend relieving you of a burden. And part of me, the exhausted, terrified part, wanted to let it. To be silent and let the noise walk out in my place. But then I remembered something. Something that didn't belong to sound. A feeling. Touch. Smell. Things it couldn't copy. Not yet. And I held on to that memory like a shield against the thing wearing my voice. The mimic hesitated, as if it sensed the shift in me. Like it couldn't find the next sound to press into the air. It paused. And for the first time, the silence belonged to me. I focused on that one memory, a day at the lake. The warmth of the sun. The way the water smelled like metal and moss. No sound in it, just feeling. It wasn't much, but it was enough to build a wall it couldn't cross. The mimic tried anyway. It cracked its voice, my voice, into pleading tones. It said things it thought I needed to hear. You're tired. You're scared. You don't have to keep hiding. But the cadence was wrong. It felt fake. I stood slowly, quietly, and the sound of my knees popping was answered instantly by another echo, warped and too loud. It had become addicted to my every detail. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. You are the last unduplicated version of yourself. Everything else had already been consumed or overwritten. Outside the closet, the apartment was no longer mine. The furniture was arranged the way it remembered it, but not correctly. It was just a copy, a 3D print made from sound and memory. Even the hum of the fridge was too precise. I tiptoed past the hallway mirror and caught my reflection, but it wasn't me. It looked like me, but the way it blinked was off. Too synchronized, like the reflection had rehearsed it instead of living it. Then the TV turned on. No remote, just static. But underneath the static, I could hear whispers, conversations I'd had in private, some not even spoken aloud, memories stored in breath and muscle tension. The mimic had stopped hiding now. It wanted me to know what it had become, and what it wanted from me. Not just my voice, my decisions. It didn't just want to sound like me. It wanted to be me. I walked to the front door, and it creaked as I touched it. A sound. A gift. Immediately, behind me, I heard the same creak, but backwards. Rewound. Like it was trying to undo what I was about to do. I rested my hand on the doorknob, and for a moment, everything was silent again. No mimicry. No breathing. Just stillness, like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd choose. Then the mimic whispered, so close I felt it in my skull. If you leave, you'll disappear. It wasn't a threat, it was a fact. Because out there, the world had been consumed by copies of sound, copies of us. I opened the door a crack, just enough to hear the wind. But there was no wind, just an ocean of static rolling across the sky in place of clouds. Like the atmosphere had been overwritten with white noise. The apartment behind me flickered. Reality, rendered from sound, was glitching now. My own kitchen light stuttered like a broken broadcast. Even the air smelled like interference. Then I heard voices, dozens, hundreds, outside in the static, all speaking in sync, all saying the same line. You're the last echo. Stay. But the way they said it, they didn't want to save me. They wanted to contain me. I closed the door, not because I agreed, but because I needed time. Time to think in silence before the mimic took that too. It was learning faster now. Every second I hesitated, it adapted. I walked into the bedroom and found the last object I'd never made a sound with, an old photo album. No audio, no digital trace, just paper, ink, and memory. I opened it slowly. No narration, no echoes, just faces. Some long gone, some I'd forgotten. It was quiet in a way the mimic didn't understand, quiet born of absence, not silence. That was the answer. The mimic thrived on presence, sound, memory, voice. But it couldn't digest what had been lost completely. It couldn't mimic what no longer existed. So I made a choice. To vanish, not physically but emotionally. To erase my patterns, forget my tics, abandon every sound that proved I was real. And in doing so, become invisible to the thing that hunted me. I stopped breathing in rhythm, held it longer, let it stutter. Each unnatural pause was like static to the mimic. It didn't know how to follow what didn't make sense. It needed patterns. I gave it chaos. I walked backward through the apartment, tracing steps I'd never taken before, avoiding creaky floorboards, opening drawers I never used, erasing the architecture of my routine. I wasn't just hiding, I was unbecoming. The mimic began to panic. I heard it stumble, a clumsy echo where once there was precision. It gasped, but the breath was hollow, like it forgot how lungs worked. It needed me to finish its version of me. Then it made a mistake. It copied a scream I had never made. Too shrill, too dramatic. It was trying to force the sound, and in doing so, It exposed the boundary between us. I leaned into that silence, pushed harder, thought of people I'd forgotten, moments I never spoke aloud, private grief, lost names, spaces in my life where no sound had ever lived. The mimic couldn't follow. It began to fall apart. Snippets of my voice cut in and out, mispronunciations, wrong inflections, like a broken record looping desperation. I'm yo, then silence. I stood in the doorway facing it, or what was left of it, an invisible presence wrapped in discarded sound. It didn't speak. It just watched, waited, like it still hoped I'd give it one last sound to copy. But I didn't. I smiled quietly and walked through the apartment, touching nothing, leaving no trace. The floor didn't creak. My steps made no sound. To the mimic, I had ceased to exist. The emergency alert stopped. No alarms, no warnings. The world outside remained a static hum. But I could tell, without anyone left to mimic, the thing had nowhere left to go. It was starving. I opened the door again. No creak this time. Just wind. Real wind. The kind that has no memory. I stepped outside, invisible to the thing still trapped inside. And the last voice I heard was my own in my mind, silent, but still mine. I walked through the streets. Deserted. Not abandoned, just suspended. The world felt paused, like a scene waiting for the actors to return. Only now I understood why no one had come back. They'd been heard too clearly. The buildings whispered. Air vents exhaled in harmony. Each place held echoes of lives once lived. The mimic had tried to rebuild the world from those sounds, but it never quite got it right. It didn't understand silence as peace, only silence as threat. I found a gas station still playing music. Faint, warbled, a pop song from a decade ago. I almost reached to turn it off, but I didn't. That sound wasn't me. It couldn't use it. It was just noise, free and safe. In the distance, I saw shapes, not creatures, people, moving strangely, too stiff. Their footsteps all matched in tempo, perfect rhythm. They were not free. They didn't chase me, didn't even look. They were trapped in their own loops, mimicked versions of the people they once were. A living broadcast, doomed to repeat the same sounds forever. I kept walking, avoided speaking, but not out of fear now, out of choice. I didn't want to be copied. I wanted my voice to belong to me, and when I used it next, it would matter. I reached the hills above the town. No towers, no speakers, just wind in the grass. Here, the mimic was weak. The silence wasn't empty. It was natural, unmapped, safe. I sat beneath a tree and finally allowed myself to speak. A single word, enough. It vanished into the open air, not captured, not echoed. No voice repeated it. No static answered. Just peace. Somewhere behind me, the mimic still waited, trapped in the architecture of my past, starving on the remains of a voice it no longer understood. It could copy sound, but it could never recreate meaning. I never returned, not because I was scared, but because I was finally whole. In a world rebuilt on noise, I had become a ghost made of silence. Not lost, just unseen, and in the quiet, I was finally free.